I want you guys to realize that if you feel like there's something there, go back and go dig into it. You need help doing it, by the way, but go back and dig into it and uncover what really happened and uncover who you really are, and take that "it happened to me" and turn it into "it happened for me."
Men on Purpose community, welcome back to the show, where our mission, Men on Purpose mission, is to elevate, educate, empower, enrich, and evolve men to be on purpose so that they can reveal their most authentic selves and live their most fulfilling and regret-free lives possible. It's cool. It's awesome. My guest today is Scott Rammage from the Brotherhood of Fatherhood. And we're going to be talking about everything and anything, being a dad, having a dad, stuff that we were taught, stuff that we wish we were taught. And we would get really deep into fatherhood and marriage and business and entrepreneurship and what to teach your kids and how to teach your kids. It's a really cool episode. I want to make these intros quicker. So before I tell you about Scott, you know about the free resources. One, this podcast. It's your number one free resource. Number two, joining the Men on Purpose Facebook community. So stop, put pause right now, jump in, do it on your phone, do it really quick. The Men on Purpose community on Facebook, that is your ecosystem. It's your resources for all things Men on Purpose and Frontrunner. And that's it. Just do it. Just be on purpose and do it. We have so many cool things in there, so many products and coaching and offers and really cool stuff going on, that if at a certain point in your life you feel like you need something, we've got something for you. If you don't, then just listen for free and take the free stuff. It's great. Either way, we know that we're helping, and we want you to just feel like you can take advantage of whatever you need to level up your life. So Scott is my guest today. He's a co-owner of VAs for Gyms and Media Machine, a company that provides virtual admin services to small business and coaches. What a cool company. Scott's a productivity nerd. He loves leveraging systems to get more done in less time. He's passionate about helping men become business leaders in their homes and communities. And that's why he co-founded the Brotherhood of Fatherhood, which is a group for men to help each other step up and lead. He's the host of the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast, Stories That Sell podcast, and co-hosts the Principles of Growth podcast, which, by the way, all three of those you need to check out. He's been married for 25 years. He has 2 teenage boys. He enjoys lifting weights, rucking, snowboarding, mountain biking, and traveling with his family. Now, with that said, Scott and I are going to get deep into trauma and past conditioning and bullying. You name it, we're getting into it. And this one is not just for dads out there. This is for aspiring fathers. This is for people who have trauma from their fathers, whether their fathers did or didn't do. So this episode is for everybody. Even though we're going to be talking from a father's perspective, you're still going to gain a lot out of it. So that's it. Welcome to the Men on Purpose podcast. Enjoy. All right, Scott. So I was on your podcast, the Brotherhood of Fatherhood.
It was kick-ass.
It was great, man. and I thought,
conversation.
You're on such a great mission like we are. And we got to support each other to help guys out there, or to lead, or to be a model for guys out there. If they choose it, whatever. Some guys don't. They want to be not on purpose. That's cool. There's nothing wrong with any of that. The thing that we like to say is that if you're not living the life that you truly want, if you don't have the money, the relationships, the relationship with yourself, the results that you're looking for, then changes have to be made, or stop complaining about it. Because I know some broke ass people, and I don't mean just in money. I mean broke people, mindset, habits, rituals, money, job, and they're actually happy because they don't give a shit. They're like, fuck it, man. I live in a $40,000 house in the middle of wherever, and I'm cool because my grandkids live next door, and I don't care. I don't need much, and that's awesome. They also don't complain about their lives. Now, I'm sure that they complain when they're like watching Jerry Springer or something noon on a Tuesday, but they're not out in the world screaming from the rooftops like the world has to change, like most people are.
Right.
It's not the world, it's you.
It's so funny you said that, because when you said, I don't care that they're not living, and I'm like, in my head, I'm sitting like, I don't either, but I don't want to hear them bitch ass whine about things. I don't want them to say, yeah, but you had a dad who was awesome. You don't know what it's like to have a dad that was in prison. I get this all the time. And that's where I draw the line. It's like, dude, if you are happy being miserable and you're not in a place where you want to change, fine, but stay out of our way.
Yeah, embrace that shit. Embrace it. It's
Right.
and there's nothing, again, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just if the formula that you're running your life by is not getting you the results you want, then try something new. That's all you got to do. That's all we're asking as self-proclaimed leaders of this men's movement, right? We're asking for people to take action in some capacity, change you, evolve you in some capacity. So I want to step back into your life and like, how did this move? Like, how did you get onto this path, this mission, this movement? Like, go way back, because the audience wants to hear your shit, man. The stuff that you just trudged through.
Right. Well, the worst part for me was my early, when I had kids, when I started having kids. That was really where I look back, I'm like, oh man. But I didn't have the perfect childhood, but I'm going to tell your listeners right now, I had a great father, awesome example, great household. We weren't rich, but I felt rich inside. Was provided for. I had all sorts of great opportunities. I got into skateboarding. My dad built a half pipe. It was like, he's one of those guys, like just stellar upbringing. School sucked balls. Straight up. School was, I had so many scars from elementary, middle school. Like I went back and doing some story work on myself and going through these situations. I was absolutely a victim of things. And here's what happened a couple of years ago. And I know I'll go more into the story, but I want you guys to realize that if you feel like there's something there, go back and go dig into it. You need help doing it, by the way, but go back and dig into it and uncover what really happened and uncover who you really are, and take that "it happened to me" and turn it into "it happened for me." Because when I rewrote those stories, I go back and I look, wow, I became a teacher in public education because my teachers were horrible to me. I had a few good ones, but I had a horrible experience. And then I changed that because I was not able to make the change I wanted to make because of the system after a while. And then I failed at some businesses and I failed at things. And I look back at all of these things that happen now. I'm like, those were all for me. Those have forged me into who I am. And those have made me so freaking passionate about making sure that, that other guys going through this stuff can identify it sooner, get in front of it, and live the life they're destined to learn. So for me, I had a wonderful upbringing. Things happened at school. It had a lot more to do with being a victim rather than being a individual, and realizing that a lot of those things weren't because I was doing anything wrong. It was because other people had problems. But the reason I started the Brotherhood of Fatherhood was twofold. Number one, I sucked at parenting when I became a parent. And I've learned that when you become a parent, it's a new thing. I had a dad who showed me how to do it, but there's still no manual. And he didn't say, hey, when your kids are born, do X, Y, and Z. No one does that. No. And parenting brings out all these emotions, and most of them are unknowns. What happens to men when they have unknown emotions going on, or they don't know to handle a situation? Several things. Avoidance and anger are two of the biggest ones I think men deal with. And I had both of those. Didn't know how to deal with the situations. I didn't know how to deal with the extra noise, the extra hours, extra stress, the sick baby, the wife going through hormonal things. So the other thing that I did, which is pretty common, I found after talking to hundreds and hundreds of men, is I started a business. I was working full-time as an educator, and I also started a business. So I just piled on in the name of providing for my family. And I provided so much for my family, money-wise, that I was completely absent, 100% absent. I told a story the other day on a podcast where it was Halloween. There was a downtown Halloween parade. My business was downtown. My wife brought my two little boys to my business, which was a bike shop downtown. And I'm like, hey, and they're all dressed up. Let's go do this thing. And I'm like, I I got a rep coming and he's going to give me a bunch of swag. So you guys go ahead. I would give up those opportunities in the name of business. And I even would leave. This happened more than once on Christmas Day. Someone would text me, hey, I want to get my kid a bike and we failed. Can we come get one now? I'd leave my family and go sell them something. So my priorities were really screwed up. And looking back now, I was escaping and trying to control,
of course,
totally in the wrong way. So my scars really are from that period.
Before we go too far into that, you said so many things there. I want to go back because there's something that I thought about, which, by the way, that business owner was me too. Running, escaping, avoiding. In our curriculum, Aaron and I have a exercise called the angles of avoidance.
That's good.
And you contrast or compare what you want to do in the result to like what you actually do. Like running, you say you want to be the family guy, but you're running off to your business at every moment. That, like, you say that the family matters, but you'll drop the kids on Christmas to go sell a bike to somebody and make what, $50, $100, right? So now you're saying that you're basically, the relationship with your kids is not even worth $50 to $100. Like, that's craziness. 100%. But I want to go back to something deeper than that, because you said I had a pretty good childhood. It wasn't crazy. I had the dad that did everything. And I think what scares, and you still had issues, what scares me as a dad is I'm that dad. And you're that dad. Like, now I wasn't that dad. How do we, let's get the genesis. What was it about school that traumatized you, that made you the victim? Like, what was it? Bullying? Was it the teachers were assholes or picking on you? Did you just not fit into the system, or was it all those things?
So, I mean, a lot of men I know didn't fit into the system. A lot of entrepreneurs, self-starters would just sit outside of that box. I did fine. I was fine academically. I have never done what everybody else did because that's what was cool to do. I had my own style. I wore Vans before kids wore Vans. I dressed up more. Like fourth grade, I was wearing button-up shirts. It wasn't nerdy. It was just clean cut. I was also, I'm short. Like, hey, look, whatever. But that makes it for an easy victim. It makes for an easy target when you're an individual and your size is an easy pick. So in elementary, that was a problem. My dad was phenomenal, but I'm not sure that he, like you and like me, I talk to my kids about, hey, this is something I failed at in life. And I'm taking every opportunity to teach them and talk through my failures and my accomplishments. And then with them, I'm talking through concepts that even as teenagers, they're having a really hard time understanding, but I'm talking through them over and over and over.
Did your dad talk about emotions and feelings with you?
He was an emotive person and very supportive, but not how to handle those, because that's what I mean, conversation to have. So in elementary, the very first thing that was really hard was I tried out for football. I got to practice late. I got the last helmet. It was probably 2 sizes too small. And I put it on my head and sat through practice and had such an immense headache that I quit. I never went back. Immediately from that point on, those are the same teachers I had for the rest of the year. Guess what? I was the little wuss who couldn't get through a first day. And now, that's on me. Like, I look back, I'm like, but it was that old school teaching environment. It was in a country school. Middle school, dude, it was rough because I was skilled in skateboarding and I loved it for the fact that I was good at it and I enjoyed it. And I was also really skilled in wrestling. And I was undefeated in wrestling. And I'm like, hey, coach, I'm going to quit. So I'm seeing a pattern here. Are you seeing a pattern here? I'm going to quit because I want to skate. And in front of the class, he called me a pussy and told me that, I'd never amount to anything. And I was a gay skater dude. I mean, all the 90s, 80s, 90s things around skating, but I was good at it. And I also got called out on another teacher because it was an assignment I did and I put my heart into it. And I didn't really like school. I didn't really care. And I put actually a lot of attention to this because I was really excited about it. I got up and within the first 3 minutes, she told me sit down because the person I picked was stupid to do a biography on. and
Yeah.
in front of the class, 8th grade. That's pretty harsh.
What kind of shitty school was this?
Dude, it's in Oregon, and it's just old school, forever teachers,
Yeah.
very small minded. Look, I was a public educator. I don't want to beat down on public educators because there's some amazing ones out there, but
it's few and far between.
In general, they're just sit inside the box, do what you have to do to get work the pension. You're happy with the paycheck you're going to get, and I just never fit in starting from elementary school.
What do you do? What do you do? There's so many places we could go. Like,
I'm sorry.
What do you do with because I was that kid, man. Like most of us who are entrepreneurial today, most of us who are naturally defiant, gonna walk that edge. Something you said really kind of triggered me, which was you'll never amount to anything. You'll never be successful. Like you're like a born loser.
Yep. And
you quit on everything. You don't stick with anything. Unfortunately, the person that told me that was my mom.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's
and
tough.
She didn't mean anything. She didn't mean it to be hateful or nasty. She that was her level of skill at that time. Obviously, she has different skill today, but as an 8-year-old kid playing water polo and swimming, like, 8 days a week, sometimes 2 a days practices, because I was super, super good. I didn't want to do it anymore. And my ADD brain likes variety. So I wanted to go out and try different things.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And all I heard was, you never stick with anything. You quit everything. You never stick with anything. You got to stick with it. So one of the things that I did with my daughter when she said that I want to skateboard, and I said, cool. I'm thinking about my mom saying to me, you quit everything, because I know my daughter is me to a T. I know she's not going to stick with this most likely, but there's a chance she will. How do I let the rope out and go, hey, your rope, let's go do your thing. But also keep a tolerance of like teaching her foundational skills that are going to help her. So I said, okay, let's make a deal. I'll get you the skateboard and all the pads and all that. The deal is you commit to 5 private lessons with our buddy, Matt Miller, who's a ex-pro skater. Matt will teach you for an hour. So you have 5 hours of private lessons. At the end of the 5th hour, I'm going to go get you a cake pop at Starbucks, and you can make a decision whether you would like to continue or not.
That's how you do it.
That's what I wanted as a kid. Like, hey, I get it. You want to try a bunch of different shit? Cool. I support you. And I want to empower you to be consistent, but also I want to empower your integrity to your commitments.
Absolutely.
Now, what about the other side to that? That when somebody said to me, like, you don't, you can't, you always, you never, my answer in my mind was like, fuck you, watch me.
100%.
And like, I feel like today, and probably for you too, that natural defiance has driven me and like kind of brought me to where I am today. I've had to tailor it.
Well,
but like, how did that help you?
It did. I mean, honestly, even going all the way back to like 5th grade, a kid was relentless, and it was to the point like, what am I going to do here? Am I going to get bullied every day, or am I just going to not care about the rules? And I just decided not to care about the rules. All whatever size of me, standing up to his chin, I kicked him in the balls and punched him in the face, and he never bothered me another day again. And from that day on in elementary, I was golden. In middle school, I took the bully on face on, like, okay, you're 10 times bigger than me. I don't care. We're going to scrap it out. And I got in trouble in school, but really what I do with my kids now is the same thing. You want to play basketball, you're in it for the season. That's the commitment you make with the coach. If you don't like it, like life isn't always easy and fun. We're going to stick to our commitments, but I want my kids to have my kid could be a professional skater, ice skater. I don't know. We have to give them that rope to go out. But I love the setting parameters and exposure, because I love change too. And I love looking at new things and trying them. And if I'm not good, okay, I'm going to move on. But I think it's just discussion, setting parameters, setting guidelines, and then discussion, and then having those clear places. But there's so many lessons in failure. And we have to teach our kids it's okay to fail as long as there's a lesson and you're failing up. And that's really the point I'm trying to work with my kids who are now teenagers, and it's the same thing. Now, the hard part for guys like us, when your kids get to be teenagers, there's some just BS to teach.
I don't want that.
Dude.
I cannot.
So my kid will come home and say, teacher said this, and this is how this went down. And I'm, that's wrong. You go. I mean, I'm just like, and I'm like, I'm having to pull that back in and be like, okay, how can you approach this? And it's been a really good lesson for me, but it's gonna get rough when you're.
Well, dude, I can tell you though, I've been very. This is another thing that I kind of think about a lot is like I've been very clear on the type of education that I want for her. And my wife we're very aligned with that. So we go out and we seek that type of education, that type of educator, not teacher, but educator. Mm-hmm. And I think she's at a really amazing school in LA. And I think at the middle school level, when this school kind of ends at, I think like 6th grade, we'll just have to find another school. We'll be as purposeful as possible. And I'm sure that our limitations or our purposefulness in choosing a school for her is going to damage her in another way.
Oh, dude.
That going to public school would damage her in this way, and going to this private, like, it doesn't matter. Here's what I want to ask you. Did you ever feel like your parents weren't protecting you? Do you ever feel like every time you had to get up in the morning and go out to school, you're like, fuck, man, I'm on my own. Like, they can't help me. They're not helping me.
No, because they always listened. They didn't have solutions. And they always listen. But even like when I scrapped it out in middle school and got in trouble, but I still had laid a line down. I still said, put my foot down. This is not going to happen anymore. Yeah. They're kind of like, yeah, okay. I mean, they were disappointed, but they also knew the circumstances. So I never felt that way. I'm super blessed, dude.
Did you want more? Did you want more from them in those moments? Like, did you want them to advocate or go fight to school for you? Or like, what did you want from them in that moment? Like,
it's really interesting, because I think about that a lot and I don't recall really feeling that way. But looking back now, I'm like, I wonder how much they did. And maybe I just wasn't paying attention, because I just, like, let's get through this. I'm going to go skate, or let's get through this. I'm going to go play soccer, whatever it was, because those were my two things I loved. So, I haven't really delved into that because I don't feel pain there. And like I said, I think there's a lot of people that aren't as blessed as I am growing up. But I think there's such an incredible message there too, is that, look, even guys who had really great upbringings have struggles and mess up. And
trauma is trauma. You could be loved on or beat on. It's still trauma. Like, you can be loved on too much or beat on too much. It's still trauma. I realized that a part of the trauma, like, I had a great childhood. I thought, my mom has her challenges. My dad has his challenges. They both are running from their pain and fear. But really, the biggest trauma for me was my dad's complete abundance mindset. Anything's possible, man. Like, that's why it says limitless possibilities on my arm. Like, it's a shit tattoo, but like, I want everything and anything you possibly want. It's limitless out there. You can go get it. You can figure it out. It's in your brain. Let's go. Right. Oh. And my mom was like, let's cut pennies in 4 quarters so that we can save as much as possible. Scarcity mindset. That probably was the most traumatic thing for me, because I'm like out here with my dad, over here with my mom, trying to figure out how to protect my mom from not, like, as I made money, I live in LA and I live in a great neighborhood. Like, my parents coming out here, still the same thing.
Yep.
There's the scarcity and the abundance. Now I just know different, and I know more, and I can teach them. But that's the challenge for my children is, I take my kids down Mulholland Drive to drop them off at school. One of the most famous roads in the country, if not the world. People travel here and pay money to get brought up to this road to ride down it in a van with no windows. This is my commute in the morning to school. And the thing that I think about is, how do I put struggle into my kids' lives so that they actually have to work for something? And how do I get them to not take this life for granted, that like I worked hard to provide? That's probably something that's going to be traumatic for them.
So you just unearthed a bunch of stuff. So we're going to be all over the board, but I think
yeah.
I think this is really fun. So first of all, my dad is an entrepreneur at heart. He's a craftsman and he likes making things. And so he owned a business for 50 years. My mom, and I'm not going to share this episode with my parents, riddled in fear, lived in poverty and has absolutely that limited mindset. Guess what happened is my dad would do something and fail.
Yeah, dude.
And he kept bringing down. So I have seen him over the years. He has these ideas, but he's like, but I'm not going to do it. And so he's come down. So I've been, honestly, one of my biggest things that I've worked through in the last years is that poverty mindset, that fear mindset, that limited mindset. Yeah. It's not limitless. It's very limited. And as soon as I've worked through that, things really took off. But that's really hard when your parents, when you watch one and you kind of had the same thing, but my dad didn't live that. Like he broke that down really, really fast because he was so, my mom was his number one. And I believe that's a very important thing. But instead of living to a place where he was functional in that, he undid that function to meet her where she was at. And I think that's a dangerous place as well. So that was really, really, really difficult for me in my adulthood, pursuing businesses and not quite understanding. Like, I think there's a point where I was okay not making a lot of money. The business was doing great. I was paying a lot of other people great money, but I was okay because, you know, money's not a good thing. So that was a little bit of a problem that I had, for sure. But for my kids, I talk to them about mindset around money. I talk to them about their mindset around fear. I talk about their limiting beliefs. I talk them through breathing. I talk them through failure. Like, dude, I pray every day that my boys will have some sort of failure in the day and that they'll learn from it. And that's a really hard place to be for a father. Really hard.
It's not, though, when you think like
what's going to get them,
like they broke their arm failure. It's like, I didn't hit this. And then I think you're doing the right thing. And because that's what I'm doing. It's like, I want to walk them through the cycle: fail, succeed, course correct, evolve, fail, succeed, like, you know, learn more. Yeah. But I think it's really important. What we're illuminating here is that everybody listening to this, if you're working a business that doesn't have the results you want, like we talked about in the beginning, if you're in a job that you hate, you got to go back to mom and dad. You have to go back to mom and dad. It's not high school that fucked you up. It's your parents that fucked you up. Yeah. Because they're your first model. That's how you form your wiring. Well, and then these subsequent things messed you up too. Yeah. Well, there's gifts and things that screwed us up, right? There's sure. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's really what separates men who are going to make a difference through their kids. One is the look, I don't know if you agree with me or not. So this is great conversation because I don't have to agree with me on everything. We were talking about that a little bit. Like, I used to fear that someone wouldn't agree with me. I'm like, okay, bring it. I don't care. I don't believe we should be raising kids. I think our mindset should always be that we are raising future adults that are going to kick ass in the community. That are going to be different on that. So like, that takes away protection. I mean, we are charged to protect our kids. We have to protect them physically, but it is hard to say, like, I hope he fails at this, or I hope some kid's a complete jerk to him and he learns how to deal with it. I mean, it's still hard, but it's what I want. It's what I want. Well, I take the Sarah Blakely philosophy where her family, her dad asked her every night at the dinner table, would you fail out today? Would you fail out today? Oh, that's good. I do it a little differently. By the way, it's a great episode on how I built this. Sarah Blakely's episode on how I built this. It's an NPR podcast talking about how she built Spanx. Is powerful as shit. I mean, self-made billionaire, never took a dime from anybody. Oh yeah, it's crazy. Beautiful story. But she says, I wasn't afraid to fail because my parents made failure an everyday occurrence. Like, I had to go out and seek failure to learn every day. So here it's, hey Alice, what did you not do as well as you wanted to do today? And she'll say, I wanted to make I was in woodworking. She's 6. She was in woodworking at school. I was in woodworking and I really wanted to make this birdhouse and it doesn't look like a birdhouse. I'm like, cool. What'd you learn from it? Well, I learned that I have to learn how to draw better. Great. Awesome. That's so fantastic. You know, like, and we're reinforcing that. There's never going to be a perfect way. I'm just taking all the shit that I wish I had when I was a kid, seeing the specific pieces that align with that kid who I was, and I'm fueling them a little differently. I'm asking different questions around them. I'm still not a perfect parent. I still mess shit up all the time. I still like catch myself in patterns that are my dad, like quick to get fired up. And I think I'm doing a pretty damn good job at it because my kids are like, well, I'm intentional with it. We're intentional with it. Like kids aren't a byproduct of sex. They're an intentionality. And even if you had there's no accident kid. There's no like, oh shit, misfire and I got, pregnant. Like, no. There's an intentionality there, whether it's universal, God-based, or in your subconscious, like there's an intentionality. So your intentionality from that day forward has to be, how am I going to parent a future adult? I love the way you say that. How am I going to parent a future adult? How am I going to raise this kid differently than I was raised, but not out of spite, anger, fear, or resentment, but out of like, these are the things that I would have loved when I was a kid. And I'm very cognizant of that. So I'm not going to repeat the same bullshit behaviors and habits and mindsets that my parents did. I'm going to actually change the game here because I'm raising a future man or woman on purpose. You know what I mean? That's what I think. I'm raising a future leader in this mission and movement that I've been blessed to be on. Put it that way.
Yeah.
You've been blessed to be on.
Oh yeah. And I will, so I'll speak to you and anybody who doesn't have teenagers yet. No matter how much you work on this now, it will change when the hormones change. And I'm not saying this to be a downer. I'm saying this to be persistent because my kid does not want to listen to me. I have an amazing 17, almost 18-year-old and 13, almost 14-year-old. And they listen to me. I think they respect me. They love me. They're phenomenal. Right. But I have to still say, stop. I know you don't want to hear this, but I need to tell you, I need you to break apart this and tell me what the worst thing that could happen is out of this when they're cycling out of control. Or if I haven't, like, let me tell you my story thing, I still do that, even though they're like, everything against it. And I'm just like, okay, it's going to get through and it's working. It's really kind of cool. It's working. But something I wanted to talk about, because you said, you talk about failures, which I think is really good because I talk with my youngest about failures a lot. There's 2 things that I talk to him about. I'm talking to him about 2 different types of failures. Just the stupid mistakes. Maybe he's playing a basketball game and he bounces the ball off his foot. I take the Ted Lasso approach. If anybody's listened to that, I write down all the quotes he says, and he's like a mind of a goldfish. It goes away like in 3 seconds. When you make a mistake like that, you say something stupid. It's just a stupid slip up. Mind of a goldfish. Don't let it delay or hurt your future steps in that next minute. Like it's done, it's gone, move on. So mind of a goldfish in that situation. But in other situations where you did make an error out of, and it's more it's more consequential. You didn't study for your test. Those are the ones you reflect back on and what should I have done differently? So I'm teaching intentionality in the way that you're seeing failures, because I don't want them to get hung up and not move forward. But the other thing that I challenge you to do this, and maybe you already do, in public schools, private schools, and society, what is the most attention spent on is where we need improvement and where we messed up. It's just natural. It's and I can't really go into the details. It would take a while, but basically we're conditioned to really kind of focus on our failures, not learn from our failures, but just we're like, and compare to others. So what I started doing, because I went through some coaching program that was awesome, the guy's like, have a win journal. And so I'm like, I don't want a win journal. Like, I'm not going to do that with my kids, but every night at the table, I need you to tell me one win or great thing that happened today. Guess what?
Yeah.
It was hard for them because they're so focused on in their day, focusing on where they screwed up. It's been phenomenal. And now it's boom, it comes out. It's amazing. And it's not always just this great thing. It's like, hey, I made it through practice today without getting upset. That's a huge win. So on the same end, we want to condition our brains to also see the places where we're thriving and feed ourselves that fuel. And I even really struggled with that. Like even as an adult, a challenge to all of you, next time someone gives you a compliment, identify how you feel when someone does that. This is the proof. If someone says, hey, Scott, that was the best podcast guest. I actually had someone say this. You were the best guest I've ever had. And I was like, I started and I went, oh, and I just looked at him. I said, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And normally you say, but whatever, or what. And I would challenge you just to say, thank you and accept it.
Accept it. Yeah.
Take really hard to accept it.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting is when someone says, how you doing? I'll say like, I pay attention to this, and language is a really big part of our curriculum, because language can derail you in an instant. It creates shit when you create things from language. And when someone says, how are you? How you doing? I notice that the mass majority of people say something like, I'm good, and their body language says, I'm not that great, but they're like, yeah, I'm good. Yeah, good. Yeah, same old. Not much. I hate that shit. And I'll say to all my coaching clients, I'm like, hey man, so how are things? Things are going well. What you doing? Not much. Or how are things going? Pretty good. I'm like, things are pretty good. Like, what are you talking about? You're alive. You're having a great month in your business, or, you got a brand new baby or whatever. And so I made it a habit to start talking to people. This is years ago, when someone's like, hey man, how are you? I'm like, I'm freaking fantastic. I am so damn good. It's not even funny. Oh yeah. Like, business is good. I'm like, no, my life is amazing. Even like today, like where I live, I mean, it's like overcast outside, which still doesn't suck. It's 80 degrees out. Like, I'm fucking fantastic. And I have to remind myself of that constantly. Cause I'm like, well, now I'm stuck, like driving down the street, and I'm like, well, there's a $50 million house right down the street. There's a $100 million house down the street. Like, man, I can't afford that. Yeah. I can't do that. Like, I'm like, well, I actually don't want that. I don't want any of that shit. I don't want that. I don't want that challenge. I don't want that in my life. I just don't. Doesn't mean I can't do it. It just means I don't want it. So I love that. I love like what you're doing for your kids and the foundations you're setting up for them. It's not going to help them be successful. It's going to help them get out of the failure, the pain, the bullshit quicker. Yeah. You're never going to protect your kids from failure or fucking up. You're never going to make them successful, because most kids that are highly successful, guaranteed, have some kind of trauma, some kind of resentment in their brains that drives them, like that they have toward their parents.
Yeah.
I mean, ask many doctors, lawyers, dentists, accountants, big professional, job titles like that. Yeah.
Well, entrepreneurs, a lot of ADD, a lot of HDD, learning disabilities, not inside of the box. I mean, there's so much there now. I have a buddy, or my son's best friend is high ADHD. And I'm like, good, dude, you're going to crush it. Like, but that's not
how you get it dialed in.
Yeah. Like, hyper focus. He's super, super hyper focused on something. Then he switched. So this kid could be pro. He's like insane on a scooter. He doesn't do that anymore, but insane on his scooter, like insane stuff, double flip type of stuff. And I'm like, damn. He's like, oh, I just got tired of it. And now he's taking doing photography. Can't speak, doing photography. And I'm like, dude, this stuff kicks ass. And so I've learned, I was talking to his parents. I'm like, that hyper focus is going to pay off. We just have to teach them how to use it to pay off. But there is a lot of anger based around there. And a lot of that is used to excel. I think it goes one of two ways, right? It goes completely lose it and don't make anything of yourself and a leech of society, or you're going to go crush it. And I choose the latter. You know, I wasn't ADHD or hyper, but I didn't fit the mold. And I think in I've really used it to help me. I've used it to help me. And this is where the brotherhood of fatherhood kind of came into play, is like, I don't want to join your group. There was other men's. I needed a group of men. I'm like, I don't want to join that group. I don't like X. And this is how I've always been. And I didn't pursue looking for a lot of groups, but I don't want that. And I want to run it my way. But I know that I need a group of men behind me. And a group of men need me. And that's one of the reasons I started this group with my business partner. Is like, I was talking to him about a young parent, and he's like, dude, you know, you have so much experience. Men could really benefit from this. And that's how this thing was born, which I
love it.
Has been really fun, but it's really turned into all the things you and I are talking about right now. Like, we got to get over all this stuff so that we can be better.
I was diagnosed with, and it's written in my chart with like major ADD, ADHD, OCD, ODD, oppositional defiant disorder, all this bullshit. But the fact of the matter was, I'm fucking bored. One, I'm bored in these boring run of the mill. Yeah. Like the town I grew up in Baltimore. Great. Okay. You have a blue ribbon school. What the fuck is a blue ribbon anyway? Who cares? One. And two, does that mean that your teachers are actually really effective in connecting with every student? No, you can't be. It's a factory. And I did not fit on that factory conveyor belt. And I was out in the hall. I was the bad kid. I was the kid that couldn't pay attention, that would amount to nothing. And like, I think about that and the trauma and the anger and resentment. Like, my parents fought for me and advocated for me at school. But I think about, like, why the fuck didn't you protect me? Why the fuck didn't you pull me out of there? Like, why did you keep me in a place that you knew I wasn't happy? And I don't like blame them for that. It's just a question in my mind. Like, if my daughter came home, well, yeah. But like, if my daughter came home every day and said that I'm really unhappy at school, like, I'm really, really not happy with these teachers. They keep telling me that I'm bad. I'd be like, well, let's find another school.
Yeah.
Quick. Yeah. The resources. Yeah. The this. But I also think that, well, maybe not my dad. I know, but that's a mindset. That's an understanding of abundance versus, I don't think my dad really cared. I think my dad was there for me. And I think I'm not in an insane asylum because my dad was like just so focused on me all the time. When he made free time, it was all about me, which is great. But I feel like there's a keeping up with the Joneses. And I want to talk to you about this too, that most parents make decisions for their kids based on not being out of the clique. I mean, I see that, dude. I live in Beverly Hills. Like, I see that.
Dude, I live in Texas, football country.
Right. Yeah. Same thing. Like, you don't play football, you're a loser. And the kid's like, but I just want to do science experiments. And they're like, you're playing football, because they don't want to be the parents that have to answer to the other parents. But think about if you were confident enough to be like, my kid chose not to play football. Mike's like, what? Why is your kid not playing football? Everybody plays football. My kid chose not to play football, Mike. So you're either cool with that or you're not cool with that, man. Fuck off. That's my attitude.
I'm going through that right now. I live in Texas, and yes, there's an emphasis on football, unbelievable emphasis on baseball. When my son, my oldest, decided to go to high school, he's like, I want to do band. I want to be in the marching band. Well, I didn't know marching band in Texas is like the best in the world. And so, and our school is top 10 in the nation. And I didn't know this. And right before it started, he's like, I think I want to do football. And I'm like, dude, that was not fun in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade. And he's like, I think, why? Because all my friends are doing it. Yeah. And we talked to him. He's like, dude, what do you really want to spend your time doing? And it was band. And he found he's working in his genius. And this kid is but it was so against what was normal. We have here what we call Texas red shirt. Most boys are a year to a year and a half older than they should be in their grade. So when you play football in 8th grade, dude, you are playing against guys who have mustaches and beards. And you're playing against guys who are fully developed. So I've experienced that to an extreme, bringing my kids in, not changing what grade they're going to be in. They're way underdeveloped compared to their friends. It's crazy.
And they're going to get hurt.
Well,
mentally, physically,
they have
emotionally.
to play on the lower team. And it literally,
Right.
I was at a basketball game and I told Kim, I'm like, my wife, I'm like, there's the A team, there's the B team. My son's on the B team. They're trying to decide if he's on A or B. I'm like, you know what the difference here is between A and B? Puberty. That's it. It's size. It's 100% size.
Yeah.
But that's an endless race and it's really hard. And my oldest son's like, I'm not sure I want to go to college. And so I have the same conversation with adults because of like, what college you could go into. I'm like, I don't know. He's not even sure he wants to. And I 100% support him.
Oh my God. They're not going to college.
Well, what's his plan? I'm like, how much money could I invest in his startup business if I'm not paying for college? Like, think about that.
Think about that.
Like, are you kidding?
My in-laws say that to me all the time. And a lot of people, not around here, but in Baltimore, will be like, have you started saving for college? I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm always going to produce cash. That's just what I do. And no, I haven't started saving for college because if my daughter's anything like me, she's not going to go to college. She also grows up in a household where her grandparents on one side, my family, and her mother and I, like, we're entrepreneurs. They've never seen me go off to work. They've never seen me sit in rush hour or like do a morning commute. They've never seen that shit. They see me choose a life and build a life on purpose. So how could my kids ever get a job? Now I'll support them on that. Here's the thing I want to ask you. How do you help a kid find or work in that area of genius? Because that's really important. How do you like hold your hands on the side and like to mold, let the clay mold itself through your almost like not boundaries, because that sounds restrictive, but like you're the, what word am I looking for here? You're the parameters almost, but they're not tight. They're like invisible lines, but you see them. They're like laser beams. You can go through them, but like, hey, stay right here. This will keep you safe, but you work in here and like, let's find that place that you were really happy and like the subject you really like in school. You don't like math? That's okay. You don't like history? That's okay. Which, by the way, my kid's in a school that doesn't have that shit because she doesn't need that. I didn't need that. All I need to know is how to calculate my commission off of things. That's it.
I know.
You know what I mean? Like, that's all I need to know. I don't need fucking trigonometry and geometry. I don't need that shit. I don't need to know about the Prussian War. I don't need to know about that. And neither does she. Now, my son, if my son wants to be an academic and go to Harvard, daddy's fucking paying for it if he wants that. And if he says, Dad, I want to struggle and pay for it, guess what? Well, power to you, son. Sure. I'm here. I'm here to help you. I'm here to support you.
I think it's almost more of getting rid of the invisible guidelines. I think like for me, every opportunity I can get to expose them to something that might be within their genius. Like I haven't found that for my youngest now. I actually think it might be banned because he's really talented and he really wants to do it. I'm like, okay, this is more time consuming than football is even, but whatever. So for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to take you to a place and we're going to shoot shotguns at clay pigeons. I found out my youngest, I'm like,
you good?
Hitting, like, this is insanity. You've shot a shotgun like twice. And I'm like, just blowing things out of the sky and they're coming in all directions. And I'm like, okay, we might want to pursue that. It's the try. And then I'm also not pushing. I see how amazing he is at it. And I'm just like that guy saying, hey, there's a club and I'm waiting and I'm waiting and it's hard. And that's the hardest part is knowing that they're really good at something, encouraging without overbearing. And that's where I found my kids really thrive. My oldest, he really wants to be an entrepreneur, but he's got to be told what to do. It's just part of him. He won't do something unless he's told what to do. And last summer, he's like, I want to start my own business. I'm like, okay. And I gave him all sorts of ideas and he didn't like them. And I'm like, you know what? Hands off. So I said, you need to get a job. So he got a job and it was an evening job, 4 to 10. And he came to me one day and he's like, I think I could paint numbers on people's curbs because people around here have that. I'm like, cool, do some research. Yeah. He did the research. By the end of summer, he's like, okay, I made $60 to $65 an hour painting curbs. Oh, shit. I made, which was awesome, still really awesome, $10 an hour repairing AirPods and refurbishing them. Okay, cool. Which one did you like better? I had more fun repairing AirPods, but I really like making $65.
Right.
But I had to let him fail at some of that because he didn't like self-monitor. He could have made 10K this summer, and he made like 3K, but he didn't push. He didn't market. I gave him marketing ideas, but that is where we have to go. We have to present opportunities and see where they take them and give them bumpers, like you said, but also let them decide whether they're going to roll over those bumpers sometimes. So it's just,
well, the restrictions, if you want to call them that, like, let's say the laser lines are like I love flying, and the lines say the sky is yours. Just, this is a Bravo zone, which is Southwest airline territory. Do not go there because Southwest lanes 45 planes an hour. Bop, 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 right? If you want Bravo clearance, these are the time frames: 3 to 5, 9 to 11, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, that you can go Bravo clearance into the city limits and fly around Baltimore City. Other than that, do your thing. The sky is yours. But if you want to enter Baltimore City, these are the parameters. So that's interesting. And I think one of the challenging pieces for me as a guy that's maintained a lot of control in my life, intended to, because out of control meant scary, fear, panic, anxiety. If I can maintain control, we're good. My environment, my kids, whatever. We have to let them get into things, even though we know like painting curbs that's going to take you anywhere, but it's going to learn something. I wanted to get a job at a detail shop between my summer between high school and college. And my mom was like, absolutely not. There's chemicals, that time, you're not going to make shit for money. And my dad goes, go do it, man. That's where your heart's taking you. I don't care if you make $5 or 50 grand. If you love it, you're going to learn a lot of shit about it, what you want, what you don't want. And what I learned, in all honesty, was I learned how this business, like, I'm just curious about like the formulas and systems. And I was like, that business could have generated 10 times the amount of money. The owners were doing too much. And I watched that and I learned that, and I brought it into college, and then, honed that skill, and then brought it into my dad's business in terms of leverage. It was great. And my dad was like, do your thing, dude. I made like $2,000 that entire summer. Do your thing. Go do it.
Yeah.
I want to change oil, and I want to landscape, Dad. My buddy Chris's dad's company. I want to do that at the same time. Okay. So you're going to work from 5 a.m. till 7 landscaping, 7 to 12 changing oil at an oil shop, or, like a Valvoline. And then you're going to go detail cars until 10 p.m. Go do your thing. You're going to learn so much. I'm so happy for you. Go.
Absolutely. I think we have to ask questions while they're going through that. So my son doing curb painting, he's like, I should have done car detailing because my friend drives Lamborghinis and Ferraris around and he does this, and he makes, he's been on TikTok with the, what do you do for a living? He was one of those, but he was the guy cleaning car. And I said, okay, let me ask you some questions. You can do it. Fine. But one thing about my business, son, is that I make money when I sleep, and I make money when I'm talking to people on podcasts. He's like, I'm like, so you have to think about those bigger things. I don't care if you go make money doing landscaping or that, but always ask, if you're trying to build a business, always ask, how can you scale? And is it going to live or die on you? Because when you're older, if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, you still want your family being taken care of. And he's like, oh.
Yeah. It's interesting. Somebody at school, like, I live in a really nice area in LA, and somebody at my daughter's school, very small school. Parents probably, I don't know who it was, but parents probably work in their 9 to 5, and my daughter said, this kid asked her where she lived, and she told her, my daughter told this kid, and the kid said, you must be rich. Mm-hmm. So when I picked my daughter up from school, and I said to her, I was like, how was your day? What did you do? What did you not do as great as you wanted to today? That was what I asked her. And she said, this. And then I said, what else happened today? How was the day? And she was like, Dad, are we rich? And I said, You know, what's interesting is my identity around money happened at about 13 years old when my dad's company started making a lot. And I was the kid whose parents had the luxury cars now. And I never knew anything about money before that. My parents never taught me anything about money. So now I'm like the kid who has money. I'm like, oh, well, guess what? It gets a lot more attention than the kid who doesn't. So I started sucking that up. So I wanted to make sure that I set a different parameter. And I said, well, let me start with the difference between rich and wealthy. You want to learn about the difference between rich and wealthy? And she said, yeah. And I said, here's the difference between rich and wealthy. Which one would you choose? And she said, wealthy. And I said, yeah. So we are generating and building wealth. Rich is for people that make a lot of money and don't have a future with it. And the money's not making money on itself. And I'm not making money while I sleep.
That's right.
Wealthy is where money works for you like an employee. And we're making money from many different sources, building wealth for ourselves so that guess what? Your generation and your children and their children will have cash coming in all the time to fuel whatever ventures they want. Businesses, college funds, world travel, that's wealthy. Right. Generations. She's like, oh, so that's why you have all the coaching clients and that's why you have the podcast and the business in the Caribbean and the business here. I'm like, yeah, that's why, because I want to generate wealth for us so that I buy my time back. And she's like, okay. I said, wealth equals time. Rich doesn't, in my opinion.
Well, my business is based on wealth equals time. I mean, we help business owners do that. And I'm not plugging my business, but it's really interesting.
No, please.
I actually have the opposite. Actually the complete opposite. I live in a very high-end community. Average income in Texas is, I think it's 130 in our town. Just outside it's like 250. I mean, it's a little ridiculous. I think California might be the same, but it's just keeping up with the Joneses is really hard. There is a HOA type neighborhood 1 block away, and it's huge, and everybody lives in that goes to my kids' schools. I live to the one that's not an HOA 1 block away. Still beautiful, nice, great houses. We are seeing the kids are like, are you poor? Why don't you live in Bridalwood? And so I have this conversations with my kids. I'm like, look, there's a really good chance that when you look at my yearly revenue, my yearly income, how much money I bring in, I'm probably doing a lot more than them. But it has more to do with the choices we're making. Your mom and I don't value that. That's not what we value. We don't value the fancy cars. We don't value the big house with the beautiful pool that sits in the place that makes it even more valuable. We value actually not having someone tell us that we can't have that kind of, this is my rebellion. We can't have a certain kind of mailbox. I can't live in that kind of place. And I'm like, just let them think what they think. It doesn't matter. Sure. And those are crucial conversations though. Yeah. That I love that she asked me that and that she didn't start forming her own opinion. Like I never asked my parents that. One is because I didn't trust that my parents were going to give me that I didn't trust my mom to give me the right answer because I always felt better when my dad gave me an answer. And I didn't know if my dad would give me the answer that would make me feel good. So I formed my own opinion. Yeah. And it was dangerous. It was really dangerous. So I feel like we are very we're blessed. And I'm super grateful that my kid's asking me questions like that, Here's something I want to leave with though. If someone's listened this far and they are a corporate man or they are an inside the box job type of person and you've made it this far without getting pissed, good for you. You have an open mind. But here's the lesson is like, don't assume your kid is going to fit in that box. It is 100% okay for you. Absolutely. Like like we were talking when we very first started, like there is a lot of corporate folk around here, a lot. It is very weird to be self-employed. I am an outlier 10X in Texas. It's weird. Like you don't work for, well, how do you have vacation? I'm like, I have vacation whenever I want it. But I think it's really important that people in fact, I know a few who are having these massive feuds with their kids who graduated because they don't want to go to school. And it's like, it's tearing their family apart because they're so ingrained in this. This is, you do A, B, C, and D. And if you do E before B, you are out of out of line. And I think the message here is like, look, there's more one way to skin the cat. And with our kids, we have to have those laser line things, but you have, it's got to be pretty wide. Your job is to keep your kids
It's got to be
safe
wide.
give them a lot of
right.
leeway to find where they belong.
Yeah. All right. Brotherhood or fatherhood, real quick as we wrap up, how can people support this thing? Because I think you're doing amazing service for the world and for fathers out there. And I'm as supportive as I can be of your mission and your movement. So how can people support it?
Yeah, well, let me tell you a little bit first. I want to go over a little time here. We're not going to do the coaching thing. We may do groups and things like that. It's a podcast, Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast, where I talk to guys like you. We also have a group on Facebook, Brotherhood of Fatherhood. Like, just check them out, subscribe. That's how you can be supportive. Our goal is, quite honestly, is to connect men with guys like you. We know that there's guys out there working within our genius when they're genius. That's not my genius. I'm going to connect them with you where they should be.
Yeah.
So I kind of feel like this conduit, like, come listen to us. You'll get exposure to all these guys in this field. And hey, even if you want to email me, I'll tell you who the best of the best are. But we also have an event coming up in June. I know you do events, and I just got another update on one of our guests, and love or hate Joe Rogan. He's been on Joe Rogan at least 6 times, and he's going to be speaking at our thing. And we have, dude, the lineup is insane, and that's in June. So watch out for that. It's going to be like a high end men's weekend getaway where there's going to be some really killer things. It's turning out to be. So those
let us know how we can support you on that. Because dude, I love or hate Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan's at the top of his fucking game. So you got to watch him. You got to love him because he's doing stuff that got him to the top of the game.
That's the whole point. Like, I may bring somebody to the table that you hate their concepts, but it does not matter. They're winning at what they're doing.
Yeah. I'm not a huge fan of Grant Cardone because of the hustle and grind mentality. However, I am a huge fan of his philosophy around buying a home. I am a huge fan around the fact that he is now in really deep personal development, trying to fix his shit again.
Yeah, I noticed that. Great. I love that. Yeah. And that's the point. We want to bring men together and elevate. So get into the group, Brotherhood of Fatherhood, or at least follow me, Scott Rammage, with 2 M's on Instagram or on Facebook, so that you can see those updates, because we're only going to take like 40 guys this first one, and it's going to be incredible. So that's how you support, is just watch for what's going on and listen to the podcast and tune in.
Great, man. This has been awesome. You and I could have just kept these mics open for like 3. I have to be careful what I ask, because I'm trying to figure out where it's going to go. But we could probably talk for 3 fucking hours, man, about no, and it's important. It's important for other men to hear guys like us who are self-imposed or proclaimed leaders in this space, or models. I think it's important for guys to hear, like, there's no right way. There are wrong ways. I think there are ways that don't serve your children, but there are no right ways. It's just the way that serves them. And that is on you to understand your kid and work and meet them where they are. Don't try and get them to bend to how you would do it or how you were. They're not you. Even though my daughter is very much like me, she's not me. She's way more sensitive, way more aware, way smarter than I was. And I have to fuel that where she is, not where I want her to be. I'm not changing trajectory of her. I'm helping accelerate her on the path she's already on.
Right.
That's a big difference.
That's
huge
awesome.
Difference.
Yeah.
That's power versus force.
And we'll come back and talk about being amazing husbands and all sorts of great things that we could go into, because these are all passion points of mine. But I love just jamming with you. It's been awesome. Yeah, we could do the Joe Rogan 3.5 hour for sure.
We could.
I don't know how many people would end up listening, but it would be great on my own.
No, we'll have some drinks, smoke some weed, just like Joe. We'll just see what happens, see what comes out. We'll be talking about aliens and all kinds of dark government shit. Those guys went way off topic at the end.
Oh my gosh.
No, it's good. It's good. Scott, thanks for being on, man. Really appreciate you and what you're doing for the world. And audience, go out and support the Brotherhood of Fatherhood podcast and what Scott's doing. You can find it in the show notes. You can find it on all of our social media. Will have Brotherhood of Fatherhood, and then go check out this event that Scott's doing in June. That's it. That's a wrap.
Right on.
Audience, thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next one.